Andy and John here, and today we're going to do a front brake pad replacement on a 2000 Cadillac Deville. We've already got the lug nuts taken loose, so we just need to get the wheel out of the way.
We got it on jack stand, you see. Always do it safely, not just on a floor jack.
And what we need to do is we have the steering wheel unlocked, so this will turn. So we can turn the wheel so we can get to the bolts back here, two more. What we're going to do is just take a screwdriver. If you can get into the slots, if you can see them here, these slots here, and the rotor, you can get in there and gently pry, and that'll move the piston. I don't know if you can see it moving. Hopefully you can. We're going to do that so we have room to take it loose. Then for this job, the best thing is a 1/2-inch ratchet, 1/2-inch drive. You can see how big that is. 1/2-inch drive, 15mm socket. And we're going to break these loose. Even though there's a bolt on the top and the bottom, on this particular car, you can just take the bottom bolt out and swing, and then just flip the caliper up. Get this thing out of here. And this will make it easy when you're just doing a pad replacement. You can do this. If you're going to change the rotor, or if you're going to have the rotor surfaced, which this one doesn't need to be done because it doesn't have a pulsation or no heavy scoring. If you have to take the rotor off, this bracket will have to come off. But for what we're doing, we don't need to take it off. You just slide the brake pads out. As you can see, these are about 50% thickness. I'll show you a new one. You can see the difference. Maybe even more than that. There's about 60% or so left. Customer wanted them changed anyway, so we're just going to replace them. Now what we're going to do, you have a couple things here. This is your anti-rattle clip. Hold your brake pads in place so they don't rattle around. These should stay in place. If you buy OEM or factory brake pads, they will usually come in the package, in the box. A lot of aftermarket pads will not have them in the box. You have to get them separate. They wanted aftermarket pads because they're quite a bit cheaper than factory pads. Okay, well, we just got a call from the customer in the middle of the job. They decided that they wanted to replace the rotors anyway. And they have all new components in the front as far as the pads and rotors go. So we're going to have to go ahead and take this bracket off. We'll show you how to do that. We'll change the rotor, and we'll be on our way. So now that we've got the caliper swung up like we would if we were just going to replace the brake pads, instead of undoing the bolt, you can just take it loose from the slide pin will come right out. Just make sure this rubber boot stays on there. For now, we're going to set this up here. The ideal thing is hang it use a bungee cord. You can hang it from the spring up here on the strut. You don't want to let it dangle down here like this, because you don't want to put stress on the rubber hose. So we're going to put it up here for now. Now if he could come around here, he could show you the two bolts that hold the bracket on. Two 15mm bolts, one here and one here. We'll break those loose. This bracket will come out, and then we'll be able to take the rotor off. Use your 1/2-inch breaker bar with a 15mm again. These should be pretty tight. Get them as tight as you can get them by hand. When you put them back in, get these loose. Break this one loose. And while I take these bolts out, we'll take a short break. When we come back, I'll be ready to take the bracket off, swap the rotor out, and start putting it back together. Okay, well, what we've decided to do is hang the caliper from the spring on the strut. We used a bungee cord. If you have a bungee cord, you can use that. You can use a piece of rope. maybe a shoelace, anything you can use that will hold it up here so it's not putting stress on the hose.
Coat hanger.
Coat hanger will work, yeah. All right, so we're gonna get this last bolt out of the bracket. Get this out of the way. Here is your caliper bracket. This is your caliper. This is the bracket that it mounts to and actually holds the pads in. And the rotor, sometimes they'll have a little clip around here. Typically, if they've never been taken off the car, it's for assembly line stuff, so that the rotor stays in place and just makes it easier for the guys and women in the plant to build the cars faster. So we just slide the rotor off. This is a hubless rotor. You see there's no other components in here, it's just a flat rotor. Now we have our new rotor here that is sealed in a bag. Now what they do is a lot of times they'll have some kind of a thin layer of oil on here. This helps prevent rust from when the parts are sitting in the parts counter in the warehouse. You want to always clean that off. You want to use brake cleaner. Don't use anything else. This doesn't leave a residue on the rotor surface, so we don't have any problems with the braking. You can see some of it there a little bit, so we'll just spray it off real good. Make sure you do this out. Make sure you do this in a well ventilated area, because this stuff, it can be harmful. You don't want to breathe it, get it in your eyes, and try not to get it on your skin as much as possible. That's why you'll typically see us using some sort of gloves, latex, nitrile, vinyl, whatever, anything to protect your hands. Not just for keeping them clean, but eliminate getting the chemicals on your hands, which is not good over a long period of time. So we'll just wipe this off. We're nice and clean. That stuff will evaporate, but you do want to wipe it off to make sure you get everything off of there. Real simple, we just line it up. Stick that back on. One trick you can do, because you can see the rotor wants to move around, I'll show you this. You can just take one of the lug nuts if they're open on the end, like this. You can see all the way through. You can just spin that all the way on, just by hand. Keeps the rotor in place so you can work. Now we're going to stick our bracket back on here. Put the other one with our two 15mm bolts, big ones. These are for the caliper bracket. It's pretty obvious, and these are for the caliper itself. You almost can't mix them up, but just so you know what they look like. With the top one lined up, make sure you always start your any nuts and bolts by hand first, so you don't cross thread anything. And as always, we never use power tools on brake work. Just tighten these up. Like I said earlier, you want to tighten them as tight as you can get them. So the longer the ratchet you have, the better, because you get more leverage and get it tighter. These will need to be quite a bit tighter than the actual bolts on the caliper.
And the reason we don't use power tools on brake stuff is partly from experience, and also just as a trade practice. If you put too much stress or too much torque on those bolts, especially the caliper slide bolts, they will actually get a hairline crack, and then going down the road could actually come apart. And when it comes to brakes, you want to be as safe as possible. So this is our best practice to do. Some others may use power tools or do it a different way, but this is the way we do every car, and we've had no comebacks. So just wanted to mention that.
Okay, now when reinstalling the brake pads, it's really important to reinstall the brake pads in the same direction as the ones you took off. Now that's assuming that they were put on the right way. These were put on the right way. Every car is a little bit different, but you can see, this is the easiest one to see. You see this round mark here where there was a little bit of rubbing. That was on the piston here on the caliper. So that one tells you it's on the inside edge, because the piston is on the inside edge. There's that one. And then here's the outside one, which has marks here from these two parts of the caliper wearing on it. This is normal, so don't get worried if you see this when you take yours apart. Now, one important thing is you have this, it's called a wear sensor right there. As the brake pads get down, you'll start to hear a squeaking noise. You'll typically hear that when you're just driving, coasting along. It's just this thing starting to touch the rotor. That's your warning that your brake pads are really, really low. And as soon as you start to hear that is when you're going to definitely want to have your brake pads done. If it lasts too long, this will start to wear into the rotor, cause scoring, more expense. Now what we want to do is we look at our new pads, and we'll find that we have two of them that have a sensor. Now, important thing to do is make sure that you find the one that has the sensor in the right direction. This one is over here to your right. On the new one, that one's to the left. But if you look at this other one, you'll see the sensor's to the left. So this is the one we want to use on this side. Be real careful not to get grease or oil on the brake pad lining, which is this part. That's the part that actually contacts the rotor, gives you your braking. If you get oil on it, it'll cause the brakes to slip and potential hazards, injuries, accidents, whatever, what have you. So now we just slide our pad in. We have this part here that will fit into the slot here, just like this. And just line the bottom one up and snap it in. And the inside pad will work the same way. You can kind of put them in on an angle and then just wiggle them in. They'll fit in. Now we're going to unhook our bracket, or our caliper, I mean. As you can see, we went through here. Don't hang it from the brake hose. Hang it through, so find a hole in the metal, the steel part, to hold it. Then we can slide our slide pin, which is also the bolt. It's threaded, but this is the slide, which allows this to slide as the pads wear and you apply and release the brakes. Slide that in the hole. You can swing this down, so we got to compress our piston because it's sticking out a little too far. Where did I put those channel locks? There they are. Use a good sized pair of channel locks to squeeze it in. These are a little bit small, but we'll make it work. You can also use a C-clamp. That will work too. I'm gonna grab a bigger pair of channel locks. So we'll be right back. Okay, now we've got our jumbo size channel locks, but you can find a pair in between these. This one just happens to be a little small. These are nice. You get them. You can buy some off-brand ones and get them pretty cheap. Probably from your auto parts store. We can get a lot of leverage with these, so we're gonna use these to push our piston back in. It's going to go in slow because you're actually pushing the fluid backwards through the system. Get that in there. I can swing this down, slide right in. Now if you can come around here, I can show you this boot here. You can see how it folded over. So it's real important that you push it in, line it up. You want it straight because your slide bolt has to go through. Just wiggle it a little bit, slide right in like butter, and we'll tighten it down. Run this in by hand a little bit here, as much as we can to make things easier. You want these tight, but don't over tighten them, because like John said, you don't want to make any cracks or anything to warp. But you do want them snug. That's that. And that is how you replace front brake pads and front rotors on a 2000 Cadillac Deville. Now to do the other side, same procedure, just everything will look reversed because you're on the other side. Pretty simple job like this. Did it yourself for labor wise. you would save, I want to say, about $200 if you went to a dealership. Now, you'll get it cheaper at some of the independents, stuff like that, but even at that, you can still save yourself, I would say, a minimum of $50. And that's what we're here to do, is to show you how you could do some things yourself, save yourself some money.